G'day, so just finished off the TV cabinet. It's all made out of pallet wood. It's got heaps of beginner methods in both the top with the slab and the cabinet down the bottom. Watch along, have a crack for yourself. Cheers. After the awesome job of pulling the pallets apart is done and all the nails are out, the first job is to chuck all the pallet wood slats onto the table saw and rip them to the same width. I like to have a lot of colour variation in my pallet wood slabs, but I also like to get a nice thickness variation. So what I'm doing here is ripping a heap of these slats down the middle to get some thin veneers. Once I've got all my colour in different thicknesses, I'll quickly sort them to create a very random selection of colours through each slab. I don't do any other preparation to the pallet wood timber. No planing, no sanding. Just make sure you apply heaps of glue and get as much of that area covered as possible so you get a good bond when you clamp the slabs together. I'm going to use a planer thicknesser to flatten all these slabs. What you're after initially is just to get one flat side. Okay, there are many other ways to flatten a slab. You could use a router and a sled, a hand plane, an electric hand plane, or you could even just use a belt sander if your initial slabs are pretty well at the same height. Alrighty, it's the fun part now. I'm throwing all the slabs through the table saw. So as you can see here, I probably should have chopped these ones in half to make my life a little bit easier to run them through. It is quite a high setting on the blade, but what I'm doing, I'm going to chop them all down into different size, lengths, and a few cross cuts. So I'm going to get that crazy pattern when we start to build this crazy pattern top. So this is what we end up with, a massive pile of pallet wood bricks, some horizontal, some longitudinal, all different lengths, ready to go to town on this slab top. I've got all the bricks stacked up now, just using the miter saw to trim off all the edges nice and square, so when the bricklaying starts, I'll get a nice flush bond between all the gluing layers. Now this is the part that I really do love the most. So if you've cut everything nice and square, it really is a bit of cutting and pasting for adults or Lego for big kids. So it's going to go together and form that perfect nice 90-degree corner using like a finger joint. So just take your time, do it bit by bit and build up that pattern. Make it as random as possible and it should look pretty sweet at the end. Now I built this slab top bit by bit, so as I'm clamping it up, I'm constantly lifting it off that work surface. If you're going to build it on a flat surface and clamp it straight down, just put some grease-proof paper down underneath and then you can leave it there, pull it off and it's not going to get stuck. Now at this stage it might look pretty ordinary. There's going to be glue everywhere. Some pieces might have moved or haven't clamped up perfectly flat. Don't stress about it. We're going to hit it with a belt sander with a really coarse grit and that's going to flatten it off nice and smooth. So about 5 minutes of sanding on this one with a coarse grit, say 40 on the belt sander. It's knocked all those edges off beautifully and you can see it's really starting to flatten up and all those colours are shining through. So all that's left to do on this slab is basically trim off the edges to get a nice neat cut on the top and on the bottom of the side piece. So check this out. I'm about to apply the clear coat, and it's at this point where you realise all the hard yakka, the mess, the glue, the clamping, it's going to be all worthwhile. Don't forget all the sanding. So what do you reckon? Pretty cool? Now, as well as all those colours and the effect that you've created, what you've also got is a super strong corner joint. So those finger joints or box joints have all locked it in. That thing is pretty solid. It's never going to break. Now it's time to start work on the framework that sits underneath the slab, so all the cabinetry, ripping down the stretchers from the pallets, making them square, and then what I'm going to do is make very much a skeleton frame. I'm not doing any joinery on this, it's all gluing and screwing just from the opposite side, so just watch along. This is very much a DIY or a basic way, but don't stress too much. All the strength is going to come in once it builds up and once we start to wrap pallet slats all around the other surfaces of this cabinet. And now I'm going to rip down a heap more pallet wood for all the cabinetry shelving and sidewalls. I've measured the width of the TV cabinet, so I've set up a stop block on the miter saw. I'm now cutting all those slats to exactly the same size and then taking them over, checking I've got enough before I rip them down to their final thickness. Got the pallet wood back on the table saw now, ripping it to a width of 1.5 centimeters. I'll glue it all into place on the cabinetry, be less sanding and a nice clean finish. The final step of the cabinet is add a bit of trimming. I'm just going to glue and screw and clamp until I've got all those front and back edges covered. I'm applying a black stain and varnish to the cabinet only, then it'll be a super contrast between what's downstairs and upstairs with the pallet slab top. Final step is to attach the slab top to the frame, so a little bit of glue, a couple of screws on the underside and on the sidewall, and it's all done. Hope you've enjoyed the build. Have a crack, it's pretty cool once it's all done.